Perfect. All right. Thank you. I'm really excited to be here today and to talk to you all. Some of you might have come to the presentation that I did in the fall semester, and that talk was really about how to find research positions and summer positions. This talk is going to be a little bit different, but there will be some overlap. So if you're like, I didn't go to that talk, it's completely fine. So I'm going to share my screen and going to, let's see here. Let's see, give me 1 second. I love having 2 screens. It's quite helpful. Okay, is everyone able to see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, beautiful. Okay, welcome. Okay, so I'm going to talk to you today about the steps to success. And I really want to emphasize that that question on success and how to not only apply to these programs, but the goal is to get accepted into these programs, right? And I'm really someone who I believe in the power of positive thinking, right? So I think we kind of put out messages, right, if we feel confident. And so I think that that's probably the #1 thing that I would really want to emphasize is feeling confident about your applications. And as you write your applications, as you ask for the letters of recommendation, as you ask for feedback, really feel confident about these applications. So for those of you that are not familiar with REU Finder, it is a blog that I started in 2018. And I started it mainly because I was emailing a lot of my students at UC Berkeley, and I was emailing a lot of students and colleagues at other universities and saying, hey, you know, here's a list of programs that might be beneficial. And I thought to myself, you know, this might actually be better if I had a website. So that's how REU Finder was born. And it has actually grown. It's grown to not only include research programs, but we have things like conferences on there listed, scholarships, of course, REU programs, and then, of course, advice. I like to write. I'm a writer. And so any opportunity that I have to kind of write, you know, some nuggets of wisdom, I will put on there. I can guarantee you that some of the writing style is kind of unique, but I have fun with it. So it's something that I really enjoyed doing, and it's really a passion project. I think all of you that are watching this very likely have passion projects. And I think passion projects, even if it's not something that's directly related to your, you know, dream job or maybe your major, but something you really enjoy doing and you're really good at doing, you probably will find that there are you know, there is overlap, right? And also the skills that you obtain from doing those things, I would say list those on your resume and really emphasize those as you talk to people. Okay, so on that note, I want to just really quickly mention a couple of upcoming events that we have with REU Finder, because I'm presuming these are mostly college students on today's call. And if you're not a college student, perhaps you're a faculty or a counselor working with college students. Now, most college students are looking for scholarships and internships, or perhaps entry-level positions. And so on Friday, February the 3rd, we will have a speaker from PG&E who's actually going to be talking about some of the scholarships that PG&E has. If you have siblings that are graduating high school seniors, they also might be interested because they have a number of scholarships for graduating high school seniors. In addition, I'm really excited about this particular talk because oftentimes I will have participants at various talks that I have that are returning students. So maybe they already have their degree, or perhaps they are doing a career change, if that's, your scenario, this might be a really good talk that you're interested in. And we'll have the links on the REU Finder site, but this is something that you might want to attend if it fits your schedule. We will also record it as well if you can't. In addition to that, there's also the Chicana Latina Foundation. This is exciting because this is a scholarship/leadership program that I've actually had a lot of my own students be a part of. And I'm really excited to partner with them to reach even more students. I know that during the pandemic, some of the in-person opportunities really weren't there. And so this is an opportunity. It is a scholarship, but even better than just a scholarship, you're also part of a network, and you get leadership training, and you get this really, really amazing alumni network that does some pretty phenomenal things. So if you can make that that as well, this is something that you might want to consider learning more about. And last but not least, I was actually meeting with them this morning. This is a program that is going to be in person this summer. I believe last summer it was remote, but this coming summer it will be in person. This is the Gladstone Institute's PUMAS program, and PUMAS is an acronym which stands for Promoting Underrepresented Minority Advancement in the Sciences. And this is a program where you will do paid research in the Gladstone Institute in San Francisco. So, I mean, anyone can apply, but, if you are not from the area, that might be a challenge. Commuting might be kind of hard, but it is a program that is specifically for community college STEM majors. So I like to find programs and highlight programs that are for community college students, and this is one that you should consider applying to. Once we have the date of when our webinar will be, we'll post that on REU Finder. And then if you're not able to make it, of course, we'll record it and then you can attend that. But this will be a program that you might want to consider. It seems like a really good program, and they've had a number of students that have done the program and then successfully transferred to university and have presented their research projects. So this is a good one. All right. So I always like, whenever I give a talk, whenever I, attend a talk, I like to know who the speaker is, right? So here's kind of my professional profile. Now, everything on this professional profile, if you Google me, if you looked at my LinkedIn, you can find all these things, right? As was mentioned in my, introductory bio, you know that I worked for Mesa, you know that I work at UC Berkeley. You may or may not know that I went to San Francisco State, and I'm from the Bay Area. So this is kind of my, professional profile of who I am and some of the things that I've done. But I really, really like to, anytime I work with students, anytime I, collaborate with colleagues, I really want to be authentic. I think that authenticity is very, very important, just to kind of give a glimpse of, who I am as a speaker, who I am as a person, and really what motivates and drives some of the projects that I take on. So what you might not know, and this is kind of what I call my true Hollywood story, is you might not know that I was a first-generation college student. So first-generation college student, meaning neither of my parents obtained a four-year degree. I was also a student parent, and I was a commuter student. And those experiences of being a first-generation college student, of being a commuter student, and being a student parent really, really shaped my college experience. Now, I wish I could say that I was involved in everything at my university, but I actually wasn't. I would, go to class, go to work, pick up my daughter. It was just kind of this endless cycle of, just kind of getting from one class to another, completing my assignments, going to work, right? It was a very busy time. I had no idea that the skills that I was developing and the leadership that I was, developing was even a thing, right? But I guarantee you that those of you that are, that are watching this, maybe perhaps you have found yourself in a similar scenario, right? Maybe you're attending 3 or 4 community colleges. Maybe you're, working full time. Maybe you have a family. Maybe you have outside responsibilities. Oftentimes, those are things when we think of leadership that it's probably not the first thing that comes to mind, but I guarantee you are leaders. If that's your experience and you are really, being kind of the first to navigate higher education, really that's something that you should be very, very proud of. I'm proud of you. I don't even know you, and I'm proud of you because I know how difficult that is. As a first generation college student, when you graduate, then you become a first generation professional. And becoming a first generation professional, again, there's a lot of things that you kind of learn by doing. And so that was my experience, right? A lot of things that I didn't know until I kind of made a mistake, or, in hindsight, and you say, oh, that's what they mean by that, right? So kind of that experience as well, I think is very important. I do not have a STEM background. I'm actually a sociologist. My undergraduate degree is in sociology. And I always like to call myself a sociologist in a sea of STEM folks. That's kind of the lens that I see the world in. And then I also call myself an engineer by osmosis because, again, I don't have a STEM background, but I've worked with STEM students for a long time, particularly transfer students. So I know a thing or two about STEM students and about transfer students. I wrote a book. I wrote a book in 2021, and it's basically a book about navigating personalities in the workplace. And a lot of it was based on my experience working and going to school, and just kind of learning, a lot about people. And then, of course, RE Finder, which I find is really, really a passion project that I really enjoy doing. So that's me. That's my spiel, and that's a bit about me. I'd like to know a little bit about you. So if you can, maybe in the chat, if you can maybe put, who's here, what's your major, if you can, kind of put that on there. I don't know if the chat is okay. The chat's open. Good. As a good sociologist, right? That's kind of what I want to know, right? I'm really interested. What's your major? You can just type it in the chat. Are you engineering? Are you bio, chemistry? Are you physics? Are you pre-med, pre-pharmacy, pre-vet, architecture? Okay, cool. Neurobio, bio, child development and pre-med, stats, pre-med, EECS, Chicano studies, pre-med, great. Psychology, political science, radiology, biology, very cool. And if you don't know, if you're like undeclared, sometimes students will say, I have no clue what I want to do. I don't know. I think a good way of saying that is I'm keeping my options open. There's a lot of things that I enjoy doing, and I haven't narrowed it down, right? That's just a good way. And also, to be perfectly honest, the students that are keeping their options open and are kind of undecided, that's really exciting when you work with that student and they find out exactly what they want to do, particularly if they do like an REU program, because I guarantee you, a lot of times when students go into one program, they come out and they might actually have a different focus or a different emphasis. So even if you are maybe, set on something, it's always good to keep your options open. All right, so where are you from? I'm sure we have a lot of people from California, but we also might have some folks from outside the state.
Ohio.
What's that?
We have someone from Ohio.
Oh, Ohio. I actually love Ohio. I really love Ohio. Do you want to know why I love Ohio? Where are they from in Ohio? What city? Makes one. I love Ohio because I've been to Cleveland, I've been to Columbus. I think those are the two only cities. So I actually went to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which was an amazing and fun experience. And I actually would like to go back. That was in Columbus, Ohio. That was kind of a bucket list that I wanted to do. I was there for a conference and I happened to go there, and it was cold. It was very, very cold. So our participant from Ohio, I hope that you are staying warm because it can get very, very cold. Oh, from Columbus. Okay, Columbus is a good town as well. So very cool.
Where in Texas? Texas is a big place.
Yeah, Texas is huge. Texas is, it's a big place. So where are you from in Texas? Oh, Houston. Okay, fun fact. I love the Galleria. If you are from Houston, I am sure that you know of the Galleria. And that is a great place to be at. Very fun place, the Galleria. Yes, I do love the Galleria. So very cool. So we've got Houston, we've got SoCal, outside the US, Central Valley. And those folks who are outside the US, if you are in a time zone that is, different, thank you. Thank you for joining us and being a part of this this community. So we're really, really excited to have you. Okay, so I keep talking about REUs, right? I keep saying that, the website, REU Finder and REUs. So before we kind of proceed, I want to really kind of emphasize what is an REU. So an REU is an acronym that stands for a research experience for undergrads. So if you do not yet have your degree, your bachelor's degree, you're considered an undergrad. And so sometimes, even though, it's called an REU program, sometimes these programs will accept students that have their degrees or recent graduates. It really depends, but for the most part, it is designed for undergraduates. And the purpose of these programs are to expose students to research opportunities so that they can consider careers in research. They're generally hosted by either a university department or sometimes a science center, and they're a cohort program that usually has about 10-ish participants. Sometimes multiple programs will collaborate together, and then it'll be a part of a bigger program, but generally speaking, they have about 10. And then they will also provide professional development training, usually on a weekly basis throughout the program. One of the things that I always tell students when they're applying to these programs is make sure that you are able to fully engage in the program, because the professional development training, the networking, and things like that, that's a part of the program, right? So even if it's like doing something fun, like going to an escape room or going to paintball or, something that isn't, in the lab, that's part of the program. So you want to be fully immersed in that experience. They generally last from 8 to 10 weeks, depending. And sometimes they have, housing stipends, or usually, and this is more often than not, they will provide housing. The housing might be on campus. Sometimes it's corporate housing nearby, but they generally do provide housing. And the stipends can vary. These are great because they can help you decide on a major. They can help you decide on a career path. They can help you decide if you like research, and they can also give you an application of what you've learned in your class. So I always encourage students to consider REU programs, because it really gives you a glimpse of something that you're not going to get in a classroom. Yes, you take lab classes, but this experience and the fact that you're working on a research project for an extended period of time, you get so much out of that. You get technical skills, but you also get communication skills. You get you get the opportunity to explain your research project, and you also learn how to explain your research project to a broader audience, which is also why I'm a big fan of presenting research at conferences. And then you go to those conferences and you network with people. So if you have grad students that you, if you're, attending a university and you have graduate students that you interact with, or perhaps your faculty at the community college, they might not know that it's called an RU, but maybe ask them, hey, when you were in college, did you ever do summer research? And I guarantee you many of them will say, oh yeah, I was at this school and I did this 10-week paid program. And oftentimes they did an RU. So that's something that I'm a huge advocate for, obviously. Okay, so why do research? If you're a transfer student, it can strengthen your transfer application. So usually you will have to write essay questions on your transfer applications. Now, even if you don't, right? Let's say, for example, that you are transferring to a school that does not ask for essays, right? There are some schools that will not ask for essays. However, you might apply to programs, and those programs will ask for essays. If you're applying to any of the UCs, you're going to have to write essays. If you're applying to any school that uses a common application, you're going to have to write essays. We have a number of pre-med students. So not only will you have to provide essays in your transfer applications or these other applications, so you'll need to write, right? I know a lot of STEM folks love solving equations, and some, not to generalize, but at least some of the students that I work with say, well, I'd prefer to do equations rather than write. Writing is a very, very important part of higher education, and knowing kind of how to write and tell your story is an important skill to have. Aside from that, doing research allows you to demonstrate interest and experience in the major, and you build your connections. So you can build connections at whether it's your dream, medical school, your dream transfer school, or maybe someday, you'll be a faculty at that school, but you can build those connections through these RU programs. Okay, so as promised, the emphasis today is successfully applying to summer research programs, right? Emphasis on the success portion, because we're putting it out there to the universe that you are going to get a position. If you apply to positions, you are going to get a position. Now, an important thing to start off with, what is it that you're looking for? I know sometimes I will talk to students and students will say, well, I'll take anything. I just want to get some experience. I'll do anything. I personally wouldn't look at it that way. Although, yes, enthusiasm is amazing and enthusiasm is great, but really, really think about what it is you're looking for, right? Don't just kind of, sell yourself short. Think about what it is that you're looking for. And as you think about what it is you're looking for and what you want and what you hope to get out of the experience, does what you're looking for match what you're applying to? That's a very important distinction as well. I'm very surprised at the number of students that apply for programs, and really what they're looking for doesn't match what the program is about. So as you apply to these programs, scour the websites, look at the websites, look at the, if it's a science center, like part of a larger science center, look at what that project is. If it's part of a university, research program, look at the university, look at the projects, right? Look at all of that. That information should frame your application. Now, here's the thing. As you apply to these programs, wouldn't it be amazing if you could just do one application and just, use that one application and apply to multiple programs? Unfortunately, you will have to tailor your application to each program. That's not a bad thing, but it will take some extra work. So it's really good that you're on this call today and that you're investigating how you can find these programs and what they're looking for to be a top candidate. So where will you do research? Some of you will do research at a university. Some of you might do it at a hospital. I know we have a number of pre-med folks here. Some of you might do research at a national lab. Some of you might do a combination of both. Some of you might do research at your community college. When I worked at Skyline College, we had students every summer that did research. Not only did they do research at the school, they also presented their research at conferences like SOCNUS, ABRCAMS, and other national conferences. So depending where you do the research, it really doesn't matter where. The important thing is that you get that experience. Okay, so what does the application process look like? You're going to have a resume, and we also refer to it as a CV, which is basically a research resume. You'll need letters of recommendation, you'll have to write essays, and you'll have to provide transcripts. Now, one trend that I've noticed is that a lot of schools are no longer upfront requiring that you have the official transcripts, right? The good news about that is it saves you some money, because if you have to request your official transcripts, you have to pay money, and you have to, if you're applying for multiple schools, that can be costly. However, with that said, be sure that if you are, whatever you're submitting, right? Whatever you're submitting to the program, if they do indeed ask you for your official transcripts, that it does match. So just want to put that out there, because you don't want to find yourself in a situation where you submitted something, and then if you're asked for the official one, that it doesn't match. So those are just kind of the components that you'll need for the REU application. So resume versus CV. If you've gone to a career fair, how many of you have been to a career fair? And it could be any kind of career fair. It could be a career fair at your school. It could be a career fair in the community. It could be anything. A career fair where you've, applied for jobs. And you can just put it in the chat if you want. And if you did go to a career fair, maybe, where the career fair was. Let's see. The chat is open. Okay. I'm assuming some of you have, okay, maybe you haven't. Okay. So really quickly, let me explain what a career fair generally looks like. So in a normal in-person career fair, and maybe you've been to one, maybe you're just not sure that it's called a career fair, but generally speaking, what it is you'll have a bunch of different tables or booths where companies will come and they will collect resumes, and they will talk to people about internships that they have, right? Jobs or internships that they have. In those types of career fairs, the rule is usually that your resume is one page, short and sweet, and you put down your education and work experience. In the research world, it's a little bit different. It doesn't have to be one page. It can be 2 pages. In fact, when it comes time to apply to graduate school, when it comes time to apply to medical school, when it comes time, if you're applying for, let's say, a faculty position or something like that, your resume should be more than 1 page if it's a CV. So I would say, as a student, if you're going the research route, have 2 resumes. That one resume that's short and sweet, 1 page, work experience and education, and then that research resume that's more in depth. In this sense, you might include things like presentations you've done, conference presentations, talks. You'll talk about who you did the research with, the name of the lab, maybe the focus of your project, and things like that. So these are very important, because I know that, if you talk to someone, let's say in your career center, they will probably guide you and say, no, it has to be 1 page. Yes, for a regular resume, yes. For a research resume, no. It can be more than 1 page. It should be. especially if you have multiple research experiences. Okay, so what do you include on your resume? You should include education. So if you are at a community college, you will include that you are taking classes to transfer. If you're already at the university and you've transferred, I would include your community college education and the current school. If you've already graduated, obviously, I would include when you graduated. That's very important. When you graduated, and if you're a current student, when you will graduate. That's important to include as well, because some programs are looking for students, that are in their first year. Some programs are looking for students that are in their third year, and that makes a big difference. Include the courses you've taken. So when I say include the courses you've taken, I'm not suggesting that you list them out, right? But rather categorize them, name the classes, right? So let's say you've taken a data science class, right? Maybe that class at your school is, data science 101. You wouldn't put that, you would put introduction to data science. If you've taken a psychology class, right? Maybe you took a intro to, I don't know, biochemistry, right? Maybe you've taken a seminar. Maybe you've taken an honors seminar. List those. Work experience. List your work experience, even if it does not have anything to do with your major. Sometimes I'll meet with students and they neglect to put their work experience, which is really a missed opportunity, because if you don't include your work experience, it's going to look like you haven't had any work experience. And if you've had, multiple jobs, put that on your resume. Even if it's like, I worked in a movie theater. Great, you worked in a movie theater. I worked at a cafe. Great, you worked at a cafe, right? I once worked with a student who actually worked at a cafe. It was a computer sciences student. That student worked at a cafe. As I talked to that student actually set up a whole payroll system for the cafe, right? That student was very good in coding. That student was very good at budgeting, and they put a whole payroll system together, which was actually quite nice, because that student was interested in working for a fintech company, right? So really don't sell yourself short. Experience is experience. If you have projects that you've worked on, maybe you aren't getting paid for it, but there's a project that you've dedicated a significant amount of time to. You've acquired skills from that project, so put that on your resume. In addition, sometimes these programs will have you list out these things aside from your resume, so list those as well. Volunteer experience. Any volunteer experience that you've done, include that as well, and really what you did, right? What you specifically did, and maybe why you did it, right? Maybe you volunteered at a food bank. Maybe you volunteered at a, something at school. Program participation. Program participation is a really strong thing to include, because it shows that you know how to work with people. And at the end of the day, the ability to work with people is a skill that is important in any field, regardless of what you go into, right? So program participation is a good one. Maybe you're a part of your school STEM center. Maybe you're in the honors program. Maybe you're in the MESA program, right? So whatever program participation that you're a part of, include that as well. I would also spell out what it is. Sometimes there are a lot of acronyms, and those acronyms can have multiple meanings. So make sure that you spell out specifically what it is. You can also include your research interests. If you have a specific research interest, it's not a bad thing to include that, or hobbies. I once had a student one time who they wanted to participate in a research program, and they were really interested in running. They actually ran marathons just for fun. Well, the funny thing is, the PI that he was working with, was an avid runner, right? And so it was just kind of a conversation piece. And it also kind of tells you a little bit about, what you're interested, what you like to do. So those hobbies, those also stand out. At the end of the day, resumes kind of can look the same after a while. But if you put down that, you in your spare time, you like to play the guitar, right? Maybe you're self-taught, guitar, ukulele, and bass, right? Those kind of things will stand out. If you have a LinkedIn URL, include your LinkedIn URL. And I think LinkedIn is also an amazing way to connect with people. And it's also an amazing way to showcase things that maybe you can't fit on your resume or your CV, but that's also another one. Your phone number. I know it seems like common sense, but you'd be very surprised at the number of times where I've seen resumes and there's no phone number. People still call, right? I know it sounds weird, but people still do call. So put your phone number and your school email. School email is also important as well. And you put your school email, but you also have to check your email as well. So these are kind of things that you should include on your resumes or CV.
Can I also add one thing on
Yeah.
email? I've seen it on various things. If you are using a funny email, that's great, but do not put that as your professional email. That really is very offensive. If you have like some sort of weird or funky email, your email basically should be your first name, your last name at gmail.com. Is like your first name dot last name at gmail.com. Now, if you have a name like John Smith or or Bob Smith or whatever, then figure out something that's really simple. Some people like put on these really like long statements or like these really funky things that it may be cool and funny to you, but first people will make mistakes in typing it. A lot of times they either type it or whatever. And then the other part of it too is the other part of it too is that some of them are really offensive and nobody like is gonna say like this person's not serious. And I'm like, I saw one of them that I was like shocked that this person had it, but and this is something the NIH person even said that and then the other one is if you're gonna have your phone number listed on your resume, make sure when they call it's not Lil Wayne, being misogynistic or anything like that, because more likely than not, people will think that you're not a serious person and hang up and not put and not leave a message, or they would be really offended. So if you have Lil Wayne saying B's and H's and it's a woman calling, probably doesn't want you to be on their team. So this is like these are things that you should probably know, and I know that it may offend your sensibility or your individualism, and that's how you like to profess that, which is great, but it's not accepted in a professional setting. And if you're going to want to be in a professional setting, you have to do that.
That's oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
I was gonna say that's a really good point. I had a person a young person that I knew, and they I mean it was kind of funny, but it wasn't funny because they would miss a call. So basically what they did is their voicemail was them saying hello, and then the person would start talking and then they're like hello, hello. It was kind of a gag thing. I mean, it's funny, right? But it's not funny if you're trying to get a job, right? Like if you're legitimately trying to get a job or an internship and you have this, thing. I mean, the thing is there's always going to be somebody else, on their list to call. So if you're looking for a job, if you're looking for, something, remember your phone, your email, you can have the email that shows, more personality, but that's why I'm saying you should use your school email, right? So use your school email. make sure your phone, answer your phone, make sure it's a short and sweet message, and check your messages as well. Because you don't want to miss an opportunity because that person can't get a hold of you. Or, and I've seen this too, sometimes people will put like, I don't know, they'll put their name. It's just a complicated email, right? Is that a 0? Is that a no? Is that a 1? Is that, this crazy email? Keep it simple.
The only thing that I would
Mhm.
ask for the school email is, yes, it is professional, and it shows that, like, if you go to Berkeley, like, that's a very, there's two issues. Some of the big universities, you end up getting some funky email, which is like, I know, like, one school gives, it's like your student ID number, you
Oh,
know,
yeah, you don't
and
want that.
or another one is that once you graduate, you may not have access to it. And
That's true.
some of these people may, like, you may send somebody an email, and a year after you graduate, they're like, I remember looking at this person's resume and I would like to use it, and you don't have access to that email. So I would just say set up a professional email. Some people are asking, don't put your birthday as your email, because that's, again, a number is just really weird. Um, and so what other people have done is, like, they would put first name, last name, and then the 2 digits of the year they were born. So,
Mhm,
like John dot Smith, you know, 2007, or 7,
mhm.
or 07, or 14, or whatever, and then at gmail.com. And I'm not promoting Gmail. You could use whatever you want. So don't think that you have to use Gmail, but that's like what everybody uses. Um, and yeah, and if you want to put a number, like, don't put your social security number or
Mhm.
your 4 digits of your social security number. Um, your birthday too, I wouldn't do it, because that's a really good way, um, that people, if it's a year, that's fine, but that's like one of the ways you could open an account. So if you know somebody's name and date of birth, you could find a lot of information about them.
That's a good
So
point. And identity theft is an issue. So I would also say, don't put your address. Do not
yeah,
put your address. You don't know who's going to, unfortunately, you don't need to put your address, right? If you're applying for something, you will put your mailing address in the application. You don't need to put it on your resume, right? Also, you don't, it's not necessary to put your address. I know sometimes students do it, but you don't know who's gonna, the resume, whose hands it's going to get into. It's also wasted space as well. Or you have your school address, maybe you have your home address, things like that, but it's not necessary. So I would just say your name, your full name, your phone number, including the area code. Sometimes students forget that. Your LinkedIn profile, if you have one, and then your email address. You don't need to put your birthday. You don't need to put certainly not your social, school ID, none of that stuff. That's not necessary.
and I just put a LinkedIn workshop that's happening. It's totally free, and they'll give you 1 year of free LinkedIn Professional, which is like the super
Oh,
Uber. It's like $300 a year. So go to that. It's free. You have to show up for an hour. You could watch the how they do it and the input they give you. If you know how to make a LinkedIn, that's great. But if you want the $300, like, I've personally gone to a couple of those, and so, because I don't want to pay $300 a year for professional LinkedIn. So
yeah, I think it's the premium. Is it the premium?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's a really good tool. Oh, and fun fact, you can actually see who's looking at your profile, which is kind of cool, right? So I would absolutely, if you can get that for free, that's worth it right there. Um, you also shouldn't put your photos. Um, Photos are not needed on a resume. Logos, it just looks kind of bad. Don't do that. QR codes, not on the resume, especially if you're going to a career fair, because like it's kind of silly, right? The QR code. And in addition, if it's a resume reader, I once had a student, actually fairly recently, who was applying to grad school, and I told them, don't put the logos and QR codes, and they insisted. And guess what? when they were uploading their resume, they kind of panicked because it didn't read it. So don't do that. References, you will need references, but you don't need to put those references on your resume or your CV. So don't include those. A biography, not necessary on the resume, and a cover letter as well. Those are not things. Sometimes you might have to provide a biography, you might have to provide a cover letter, but it's certainly not on the resume. So don't include that on your resume.
The other thing that I would add also on your resume, again, like I understand like some people are very stylish and stuff. Don't make a funky looking with funky fonts and all of these different stuff. There's two problems. First, people that are going to be looking at your resume are in their mid-50s and they're not used to it. And it's really hard to read. And if you're reading through 150 resumes and CVs, like it just really it's a bothersome thing first. But second, most of your jobs REUs, everything use computer systems. So your resume may not upload correctly if you're using weird fonts or weird formats or anything like that. And I know that like some people have these really stylish resumes or resumes, and I really like them. They're very aesthetically clean, but some of those systems that scan them into their system can't pick them up. So it has to do something with like contrast or whatever. So don't do that either. So
yeah, keep it simple. Absolutely. Because again, you don't want to get passed up for an opportunity that you're qualified for just because they can't read your resume. We have an article on REU Finder. It's kind of a funny one, like, is it cryptic or scary? Things to avoid doing on your resume and kind of best practices. Because those are, I mean, yes, it's good to be individual, but you all are individuals, right? You're all individuals. And so you want to make sure that your resume reflects you and your credentials, not, like, oh, this person has, this resume that I can't even read or that I don't, understand. So that's a really important one. And also a lot of you're going to get a lot of opinions about resumes, I would say. The thing is about that is I always tell students, like, get all the, advice, but at the end of the day, like, whatever you feel reflects you best, go with that. Because you might talk to, 10 different people and they might tell you 10 different things. But generally speaking, the advice that we're giving is pretty standard. So I hope that's helpful. Letters of recommendation. So this is also a very, very important thing. Letters of recommendation. Now, one good thing that I have noticed, and I think this is a direct result of the pandemic, is I have noticed that more and more programs are actually asking for one letter of recommendation. Now, sometimes they want, two, but three nowadays, three is not as common as it once was. I think a lot of that has to do with the pandemic. To be perfectly honest, I know that, during the pandemic, when everybody was taking Zoom classes, it was very, very hard to make connections with faculty. It was, hard to make connections, period. And so I think that as a result of that, I believe that a lot of these programs wanted to make it so, they had students that were not passed over just simply because, of the pandemic, or maybe they couldn't make connections with faculty. But with that being said, if you are a first year or a second year student, they will understand that, you're a first year student, second year. If you're a junior or a senior, now, if you're a junior or a senior, they probably will, want only from faculty, or they will want not just only from faculty, but they probably will want a letter from faculty. But in addition, that's really, really something that you need to be proactive about. Like, you need to make those connections with people. You know, we're back in person for the most part, right? Most of our classes are in person. So you really need to go to office hours, right? Going to office hours is the best way to make those connections. Seeing your counselors, even if you're doing fine, right? Even if you're like, yeah, I already know what classes I need to take. I already, I have my ed plan, I'm good. But still going to those office hours, because you're going to need letters of recommendation at some point. And that's how you get those. Your MESA directors, right? That's a win-win situation. If you have a MESA program, talk to your MESA, directors, your MESA counselors, your STEM center directors, your STEM center counselors. They want to support you. That's what they're there to do. They're there to support you. They're there to help you. They know that if you get that, dream REU program, that you're going to come back and you're going to talk about it, and you're going to share your experience with other students. So, they are there to help you and support you. Supervisors and managers are also good people that can, write letters of recommendation. What you want to do, though, is you want to make it easy and give them talking points. Give them talking points. And in order for you to give them talking points that are appropriate for the position you're applying for, list those, right? You can offer, hey, do you want to read my essays? The thing is, most faculty are not going to read your essays. I mean, I like to read my students' essays, but I generally read them because I'm a writer, right? I read them and say, oh, I have some edits for you, but the average person is not going to want to read, 4 essays. However, if you give them talking points and if you give them things to highlight, that will be helpful for them. And here's the deal. Once we write a letter of recommendation for you, once we write one, it's very easy, because all you have to do then is just change it, right? You just change who it's to. So don't feel bad if you're like, oh, I'm applying to 4 programs and I have to, ask for 4 letters of recommendation. That's not a big deal. Don't ask friends or family members. I know friends or family members. There was some program recently that I can't remember what program, but they were like, yeah, we'll allow classmates or friends or family members. Okay, sure. That was unique to that program, but for the most part, usually no. Don't ask classmates. Even if, let's say, for example, you help somebody in physics and you really, really helped them in physics and they were so grateful, they shouldn't write you a letter of recommendation. However, you can, highlight, maybe you help somebody in physics and, volunteer tutor or whatever, but friends and family members know, classmates know, but STEM faculty, counselors, MESA directors, STEM center directors, those are the types of people that should write you letters of recommendation. And the more information you give them and the more advance notice you give them, the stronger the letters will be. So if you ask them the day before, they're probably not going to do it. And if they do, it's going to be a very short letter of recommendation. What I would suggest you do, I would say you should, maybe if you use Google, a Google Doc or an Excel spreadsheet, and, write down the programs that you're applying to, a link to the program, what the program, just like a blurb about what the program is and the due date. That makes it so easy. I would also send kind of a reminder email like, dear so-and-so, thank you so much for writing this letter of recommendation. Just a quick reminder that this is due, next Thursday. And they'll say, oh yeah, thank you so much for the reminder, right? This is kind of a courtesy reminder. That's kind of how you get strong letters of recommendation and successfully apply to these programs. Okay, the interview process. So this is something that so when you're applying to these programs, you might not realize it, but you're being interviewed. And I know that sounds funny, but there really is an interview. I've run REU programs myself, and
Tiffany,
different.
this is the question on letters of rec.
Yeah,
It says, can tutor also write letters of recommendation?
it depends. So, if it's a peer, probably not, because it would be a peer, right? Probably not. If it's a staff member, right? Maybe if it's a staff member at your school, and they have a university email or whatever that's working there, maybe in like the student learning center or something, like a staff, then they probably could. But if it's a peer, probably not. So the interview process. So when you apply for a job, it's pretty straightforward, right? You get a call like, hey, we'd like to have you come in for an interview.
Sorry, this is another question
Oh,
about letters of recommendation.
sure.
And this is what you're talking about, how to ask your professors about letters of recommendation.
Uh-huh.
I don't know where this person is at, but if you're at a community college, if you're taking chemistry, you're spending almost 11 hours a week with that professor, and you should be able to talk to them during lab, during office hours, all of these different hours that you have in there. I'm one of those people that I don't have time to go to office hours, just how my timing works.
Mhm.
But like during labs and stuff, there's always downtime and you could go talk to them, ask them questions, get to know about them, they get to know about you. I don't know if you have any other um, recommendations about how to ask for them, as you're
Absolutely.
doing this part.
Yeah, I would say for your professors, I mean, if you're in lab with them, they spend a lot of time, waiting around in lab. Maybe let them know why you're taking the class. If you're taking a organic chemistry class, don't assume that they know that you're a bio major. Don't assume that they know that you want to transfer to a 4-year, right? Don't assume anything. Maybe strike up a conversation. Hey, I'm really enjoying this class. Um, I'm a bio major, or I'm a, chemical engineering major, and I'm hoping to transfer to, 4-year. If you look at their webpage, right, the likelihood is you can see where they went to school. Maybe ask them about their experience, right? Maybe you ask them about their experience. Maybe you ask them if they did an REU program. And they said, oh yeah, I did an REU program at UC San Diego, and that's how I got involved in chemistry, and I really enjoyed it and I really liked it. That's a conversation. And then they might say, oh, have you considered applying to a similar program? And you might say, oh yeah, actually I was thinking about it. I'm that's something I'm going to do. And so really establishing that rapport is very important. Equally important, and this is something that sometimes students forget to do, is if after you get those letters of recommendation, if you actually get in the program, let them know, right? Let them know. Send them a postcard. Maybe bring them back a gift or something, right? Something small, like, hey, here, I was here this summer, and it was a great experience. Here's a magnet, right? Here's a magnet. I was in Maryland for the summer, and I brought you back this magnet. Want to say thank you. It was a great experience. One, it's just nice, and two, it shows appreciation, and three, the likelihood is you probably will want another letter of recommendation from them. So keeping that rapport. I often get, and I love this, I often get emails from students, and it's very, very nice because the students will keep me up to date on what's going on. But the students are pretty savvy, because they won't write the letter specifically to me. They'll write the letter to, the email to a number of people. And they might say, I'm reaching out because you're somebody who's been a great, advocate of mine and supporter, champion. And here's what I've been up to. And they kind of, let them know what you've been up to. That's not a terrible thing as well. But if you can customize it, if you have time, that's probably ideal. But really keeping them in the loop. There's nothing worse than, you spend a lot of time, referring somebody and writing letters of recommendation, and then you don't know what happens, right? I work with a lot of students, so I'm not like hurt if they don't let me know, but I do have one colleague who was actually, like, oh my goodness, like, I can't believe that student didn't tell me, it kind of, was, they were kind of offended by that. So you want to just make sure it's just a professional courtesy, right? That you let them know if you get in the program. And if you don't get in the program, it's okay. Still say thank you. Like, hey, there was a very competitive program, but I really want to thank you, for taking the time to support me. You never know. You might reach out to the, person that wrote you the letter, and they might say, oh, that's unfortunate that you didn't get in that program. However, have you heard of this program? Or, oh, we had a student last summer who did this program. Why don't I connect you with them? Maybe they can put you in touch with someone, right? It's leveraging those connections. So interview process. So again, you probably won't do an interview for an REU in the formal sense, right? You probably won't go and have an interview in person, but it's very likely that you will have either a Zoom interview, maybe with the faculty member who you're going to work with, maybe an email correspondence, maybe a phone call, right? And that's where, answering your phone is important, or, at the very least, including your phone number so they can contact you. Your essays are certainly an interview because it's a reflection of you. If it's filled with typos, or if it has, if you're applying for a, I don't know, if you're applying for a research position at Harvard, and in the essay, you keep saying, I'm really excited about doing research at Penn, and they're like, this person didn't edit the, essay, right?
I have done that, and it's not a good thing.
It's not a good thing, right? Because that shows that you don't pay attention to detail. And here's the deal. If you're going to be working in a lab with a lot of expensive equipment, they want somebody who's going to be paying attention to detail. Maybe it is in person, right? Maybe you go to a, if you are at a conference, and if you're at a conference and generally speaking, you're wearing a name tag, right? If you're at a conference and like people are waiting in line to talk to somebody, and you just cut through everybody and talk to them, they're going to remember that. And they're going to say, oh, I remember that person. They were at the conference and they were just so obnoxious. They cut everyone in line, right? They're going to remember that. So that's an interview. Even though it doesn't seem like an interview, it's an interview. So really, like, the second that you apply for that position, whether it be sending them an email or, answering the phone, don't have your parents. I know this sounds, kind of common sense, but you'd be very surprised at, I've run REU programs and I've had parents call, and, I mean, even if the student is a really, high caliber student, like, I don't want to deal with parents for 10 weeks, right? So don't, have parents call, don't have your friends call, things like that. You are the person that's applying. And so you should, not do that. And you really want to make a good impression, right? So your emails. So when you draft your emails, it's not text speak, right? It's not like, hey or hi, you should refer
or
to
yo.
Yo, yeah, exactly. Like stuff like that. I know sometimes you might have, professors that are like, call me, John, it's okay. But, it's always good to be more formal initially. And if they say, oh, no, you don't have to call me that. Call me, Doris, or whatever their name is, you can do that, but make sure that you are respectful. And I think that's just in general.
I would say this. I work in a healthcare setting, and a lot of people that I work with, a lot of doctors, they are some of them are my friends, residents or attendings, and some of them say, "Oh, call me by my first name," and that's true when we're hanging out, talking in the break room. Sometimes we go out for breakfast after work. But if you're in front of other colleagues, certainly if it's a professor and they have students run, you always address them by their name in front of patients. So if you're in a research lab, absolutely, you may be working with a postdoc, and if there's other people around, you always like give them that respect and that title, and then you could be friends with them and call them whatever you want to call them. But this is kind of like a really important professional thing. Also, it is and I can tell you this from a man's perspective, you have to be very, very specially sensitive with women because women get talked down all the time. Um, oh, they call them by their first name or sweetie or honey, and that stuff is like absolutely like no, and so you have to be very like conscientious, and even this may be in a research lab or anything else. So be very like important. Like I've had patients or even like patients or even nurses call a female resident who may look young by their first name or something like that, and you have to like correct it right away. Now you don't need to correct it, but just you be self-aware that somebody who has worked hard and is in front of their peers or other people, you have to show them that respect, because they will show that respect back to you, and it's a very subconscious thing, and you don't and I know most people don't do it on purpose, but um, it's really important to do that to do that.
Yeah, definitely. It's very important. Sometimes you might have a researcher that you're working with who's young. I mean, we have, I have faculty that I work with that are very, very young. Um, I think that if you're going to a lab and you're like, oh, this person's not much older than I am, right? I don't really have to be as formal. No, you do have to be as formal, right? You do, and you want to show that respect. That's very, very important, and I think sometimes, people are caught off guard, like, oh, this person's my age, like, oh, they're not, they're not that much younger. Like you want to give them that respect. And especially I would say, for quote unquote non-traditional students, at the same time, you might have a returning student, right? You might have a student who's in your lab that is older, right? Maybe they're older. I would say avoid, generalizations about people's age. You might have somebody who's a lot younger. You might have somebody who's older. You might, I think that I always say the platinum rule, right? Treat others how they want to be treated. If someone wants you to call them, doctor, call them doctor. If someone says, it's okay, you don't have to call me that, but error on the side of more formal, it's just going to it's going to be much better if you do that. Okay, so
Can I just add, sorry, I'm just going to add one more thing too. This is two more things, but they're connected. Also knowing people's names. So some people do not have traditional names. They are from another country. So always ask them, how do you say your name? Which is, that's not, it's not like rude or anything. And then the other one is also with their gender as well. And
yes.
their pronouns, and that's a really important thing. And some people are like, oh, well, that's like being woke or whatever. That's great, but again, you may not feel this is something you may not feel comfortable about, or you think it's not important, but that to that other person is, and it is and you're not in that position to make that, and that's also very important.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that, as you work with people and you have, interactions and experiences with people from a variety of backgrounds, you might ask them, you might say, how do you pronounce your name? Right. And you say, okay, they might say, oh, call me, call me, Sam, it's too hard to say. And you're like, no, like, what do you prefer to be called? And they might say, well, here's my, given name. Or maybe, they have a different name that they like to be called. But again, the platinum rule, treat others how they want to be treated. And if they want to be addressed a certain way, you want to have a good rapport with people, right? So however that is, don't make assumptions. So it's very common to have essay questions. And so this is just a typical essay question, right? So I've kind of gone through a lot of different research programs, and I came up with this typical one because this is pretty standard. So as you kind of practice your writing, so one essay question might be, please explain why you wish to conduct summer research of the type offered by the program and how this relates to your overall interests and goals. In addition to that question, I would look at what they're looking for, right? So let's say, for example, that they are interested in students that are interested in graduate school or in, pre-med or in, careers in research, right? You want to look at what they're looking for, and you also want to be able to clearly articulate what you're looking for to see if it's a match. But in addition, this is your elevator pitch, right? So this is totally your elevator pitch in this essay. So does everyone know what an elevator pitch is? That term is, the reason why they call it an elevator pitch is because it's kind of a short and sweet synopsis of like who you are, what you've done, and what you're looking for, right? And the little graphic is like, the 30-second elevator pitch. I mean, usually an elevator pitch is not 30 seconds. That would be kind of impossible. But as you articulate and really kind of, audition, if you will, in these opportunities, you want to have that, right? So like, maybe, for example, you really liked chemistry. Maybe you loved chemistry. Maybe you started tutoring chemistry. Maybe you really enjoyed chemistry. Maybe you want to transfer to a school and study chemistry, or maybe you want to get a, PhD in chemistry. They're not going to know that unless you tell them, right? So your overall interests and goals. And maybe you haven't, maybe you're a first-year student, maybe you're a second-year student, maybe you haven't taken, maybe all you've taken is math, physics, chemistry, you haven't taken any upper division classes, but you're excited about it, right? Maybe you're planning to take a class in the, fall semester of next year, right? And that class that you're going to take in fall actually has, something to do with what the program is doing. Maybe, for example, maybe you're applying for a program that is focused on health, right? Maybe you have a family member. Maybe you've been impacted by diabetes or cancer or, some other illness, right? And that's your motivation for that. There's nothing wrong with including that in your application, just to kind of give them a sense of why you want to do this program. What you don't want to say is, you don't want to say, oh, I really want to do this program because this is a prestigious school. That's a very shallow answer that doesn't really tell them anything, right? Like, oh, this school is, the #1 school on, US World, whatever. Okay, sure. But I would say, what is it about that particular program or that research area that appeals to you, right? Not just, reciting some rankings, right? Because that's not really a tell, right? So really, you're going to have to look at the programs in order to craft a substantial, essay. So the perfect candidate. So remember, we said this is successfully, right? This is successfully applying to programs. The perfect candidate in all of your materials, whether it's your essays, whether it's your resume, whether it's, everything, you have skills, you have interest, and you have aptitude. So skills, interest, and aptitude. Now, if what you hope to gain from the experience is why you're applying, right? Maybe you're at a community college and you've only taken lower division coursework. Maybe maybe you're in your senior year right now and you're like, I took these classes, but a lot of them were online and I really didn't get the full experience, hence why I'm applying to this program, right? I think that's a valid reason. So I think that, highlighting those skills and show that your interest and show that the aptitude, right? And what you hope to gain from the experience. That's what's going to stand out as an applicant. Okay, so here's some questions that are pretty standard. So fun fact, I go on Reddit all the time, and I like to see some of the questions that people have about REU programs. And so I pulled some of these from Reddit and from some webinars that I've done, and here's common ones. Are they
This
always?
is actually, I have one that somebody asked.
Yeah.
Are you used only in the summer?
That's a good question. Sometimes there are winter programs. Sometimes there are shorter programs. I know that Carnegie Mellon, for example, has a program that's 2 weeks. Last year, I believe there was, I forget what school, they had a 2-week program as well. Sometimes there are shorter programs. Sometimes there are academic year programs. The national labs administered by the Department of Energy, they have academic year programs. NASA has year-round programs. So they're not only during the summer, but sometimes they do have academic year or short-term programs. That's an excellent question. So are they always 10 weeks? Generally speaking, they're from 8 to 10 weeks, with the exception of those shorter term ones that I mentioned, like the 2-week programs. But usually 6 to 8 weeks are, and if you think about it, like, it goes by really, really fast, right? To work on a research project, but that is a common question. And usually the reason why students will ask me, is it really 10 weeks? Is it really that long? Maybe because they have a vacation planned, or maybe because they're planning on taking classes. Don't take classes and do an REU. Don't do it. Don't do it, because I guarantee you, there's going to come a time where you have to study or you have an assignment and you're going to be double booked. So don't do it. I know it's tempting, even if it's on Zoom. I guarantee you there's going to be time. And I always tell my own students, undercommit and overdeliver, right? So undercommit, overdeliver. So yeah, but generally they're, 8 to 10 weeks, depending.
Yeah, and I think you have to look at it this way. They are paying you, so it is a
Yes.
job, and you have to treat it as such. And and if you, and this is something that I just want to say, people say in interviews or in their essays, I really want to do this program, and I'm also going to be taking organic chemistry and study for the MCAT. I would say you're probably not going to get that. If
Yes.
you lie about it, and I know a lot of people do, um, they will know on your output, because they've done this many, many times with many other students. Some of them much smarter than you, and some of them not as smart as you. So they know the kind of output they expect, and they'll test you. And if you're not producing it, they will know. And I know someone who got booted from a program because they were taking, they paid for I think it was a prep course, and they were trying to do it, and they basically told them, because they were tired, because they would go home after, the research, and they would study all night, and they were tired during the day, but also they couldn't do some of the field trips that they were doing on Saturday because they were taking practice exams. And so they basically asked them to leave. And they could do that at any time.
Absolutely. It is a job. right? And so I remember I had a student who this is a program I ran at Berkeley, and the student was like, oh, actually, I'm from Cupertino. Can I just commute? And I was like, no, actually, you can't commute. And I was like, we need you to stay, on site. One, we need you to stay on site because we want you to engage with the other students. And two, if you're familiar with the area, like commuting from Cupertino to Berkeley, like that is terrible, right? And so, I wouldn't want to have to, have the student worry about, commuting back and forth. If they allow you to commute, sometimes they will allow you to commute. And if that's something that they're okay with, sure. But if it's a residential program, if it is a residential program, then the expectation is that you will stay on site, during the program. So that's something to look at. Another question might be, does the type of summer research you end up doing matter depending on your major? Believe it or not, no. So again, remember I said interest and aptitude and skills, right? So if you are somebody who's like, I just want to get research experience, right? Like I have these skills and I'm willing to contribute to a research project. You can be any major. In fact, they might want students from other majors. Maybe you're a math major. I don't know. I didn't see that we have any math majors on here, but math majors, right? Math majors are great. Maybe it is a program that's at a medical school, but they want someone who knows coding, right? Anyone who's run any of these programs will want variation, because if you think about it, they're also building a cohort, right? And so they're going to want to have different skills. And the projects might, there might be, they might ask you like, which projects are you interested in working on? And so if you're open, if you're flexible, and if you really, are interested in doing research, then they might say, okay, well, we're going to put you on this more environmental, program, right? And if you're like, okay, sure, I'll learn that. But they're not going to say, oh, you're aerospace, hence you have to work on, this aerospace project, right? In addition, they might, and I've seen this before. One time I had a student who, he was really, really good at MATLAB. He was really good at MATLAB. And he actually was kind of a liaison with another lab, right? He was a mechanical engineer studying aerospace. And so like they actually, had him doing a lot of interface with another lab. So that's something that, that you might find as well. And also don't limit yourself. Don't think to yourself, okay, I'm only, in this, physics major, so I can only do, physics research. No. You have a lot of skill. Maybe you're, doing research in material science, right? So don't limit yourself. And I would say as you apply to programs, and look at different programs, also don't limit yourself, because you might notice that sometimes they'll say, who are they looking for? STEM majors, right? I've seen programs that are psychology. I think we had a psychology person on here. I've seen political science programs, right? The ability to do research, I would say, they're looking for just really, really motivated students, and you can be any major to be, doing research.
Ms. Reardon, this is a question.
Uh-huh.
Research opportunity for postgrads. I'm afraid I won't make it in a program since I have one summer before I graduate.
So if you have one summer before you graduate, so like, are you a fall graduate maybe? If you're a fall graduate, you absolutely will, you're still an undergrad, so you can. In addition, there are some programs that will take recent grads as well. I know I believe it's the Buck Institute. They have the Summer Scholars Program. They will take recent grads, and there's a number of other programs that will take recent grads. So if you are a recent grad, Or if you have the one semester left, you also will be eligible. Another question that I got, which is kind of related to this, is one time I had a student ask, well, I'm graduating, right? They said they were graduating, but they actually were graduating from community college, not from the four-year. So you're still considered an undergrad. Even if you have, let's say you have your associate's degree, you're still considered an undergrad, so you would be eligible. But it sounds like for the student that just asked that question, if you're graduating in fall, it seems like you still would be eligible for this summer. And then if you are, perhaps graduating in spring, there are some programs. Usually, this is kind of a workaround, is if you are graduating and have applied to grad school or are planning to apply to grad school, sometimes they'll take you. So that's something, they're kind of flexible on that. Another question is optional really optional? So if they say, for example, like, here's the essay question and here's an optional one, I would say anything optional is not really optional, because that says that you took that extra step, right? That says that you took that extra step to go above and beyond. And so when you see optional, pretend it's not optional and just do it, because they're going to see that and that goes with the interest, right? Remember I said interest and aptitude. The optional shows interest, like, oh, the student took the time to provide that third essay question or to provide that additional letter, right? If they say one required letter and one optional letter, you read that as two optional letters. I would also, and this is a trick that I do for myself, whatever the deadline is, pretend it's an earlier deadline. The deadline is the 25th of February. Pretend it's the 20th of February, because you don't want to wait until the last possible minute. Your electricity could go out. You could have an exam. You could have, what I mean? Don't wait until the last minute. Don't submit that application at 11:59, right? And on that note, in terms of like the deadlines, if it said that the deadline is 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, make sure, right? Because sometimes they do have like a timestamp. So really, I would say, in addition to the optional not really being optional, whatever the deadline is, give yourself a buffer. That's just a good practice to have with a lot of things, not just, because later on, like, let's say that you do, do an REU and you go to grad school, or you transfer, things like that. You're going to have to deal with deadlines, and any deadline that you have, I would say, give yourself a window, and whatever that deadline is, make sure that deadline in your eyes is earlier, because guess what? Then you're not scrambling around, right? That's just kind of a skill. Here's another question. Why do they need my photo? I thought that was a funny question, but a valid question. So sometimes they might need a headshot of you. Let's say, for example, you are selected in the program. They might ask you for a headshot, maybe even a bio. And so they're probably just, requesting it in advance, just so they have it. Sometimes they'll put your picture on their website, who you are, your major, your name, where you're from. So if you have a photo, send it to them. If you don't have a photo, it's good to have one, especially for your LinkedIn. If you have an iPhone, or maybe you have a friend that has a nice phone, the portrait mode is actually quite nice. Your career center, they might do photos. I know at Berkeley, and this is something that's kind of cool, they just installed a photo booth, which I think is really cool for professional headshots. Also, if you don't have, something like that, that might be something that I've even had students that, and I think this is pretty smart. I've even had students take pictures for other students. Sometimes they charge them, sometimes they do it for free and put it on their resume as volunteer work, and that works too. But they might need a photo. So if they need a photo, don't question it. Just send a photo, and the photo should be like a head, head and shoulders type of photo, not like not a selfie. Don't take one in your car. That just doesn't look good.
Or doing a pong, whatever, the beer pong or anything like that.
Yeah, don't do a crazy one. Don't, and it's just you, not you and your girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever. Just you picture of you, right? I've had some funny photos sent to me. And if they ask for a photo as a JPEG, send it as a JPEG, right? So make sure that you send, whatever they need. But it is good to have a photo. I mean, you never know. If you get a scholarship, right? Chances are, if you get a scholarship, the first thing they're going to ask you probably is, hey, can you send a photo? If they do a press release or anything like that. So having a friend take a photo, or the portrait mode is good, good lighting, and make sure it looks like you as well, right? If you're somebody who wears glasses and you are used to wearing glasses, or maybe you're someone who doesn't wear a lot of makeup or whatever, like it should look like you, and you should look comfortable and confident. That's a good piece of advice.
Actually, I asked somebody who runs a program about that, and they said a couple of things. First, they want to put a face with the name, and it's not about you being cute or not. Second is they're all grant funded, so they have to actually submit reports that these people are actually like real life people and not people that they created on paper. So that's to avoid fraud. And third, they put that stuff on the website. So if you think that take your best picture that you can, and so that's why they want your pictures. There was a question here, and I didn't see it, about the optional section. What kind of things can be written on the optional section?
Okay, so optional. So what I think, well, when I was referring to optional, like they might say, like, here's the 2 essays that we want you to write, and then here's an optional essay, right? Like you can include this optional essay if you want to or not. And then usually the optional essay would be one that you could include, or maybe an optional letter of recommendation, or and this is actually a helpful hint if there's anybody that's applying to transfer. They might say something like, is there anything else that you'd like us to know, right? If there's anything else, that might be optional, right? And you can include anything you might want them to know, right? It could be something that's not in your resume. It could be something that you elaborate on, but I think the more information that you give them is going to show interest, right? If you have very short, and this is an important one too. If you have bullets, right? So sometimes when someone says to me, if I'm I administer a lot of scholarships, right? So if someone's saying like, hey, I have this scholarship, that you can apply for. If someone says to me, well, how short can it be? That's a tell, right? Like, well, how short can it be? Don't say things like that. When it's just some bullet points, that doesn't really tell much, right? At the same time, sometimes, people can write these long essays that say nothing, right? So you really want to be clear about why you're applying, how it relates to your goals, what is it about the program that interests you. But the more information, the more it's going to demonstrate interest. Okay, another question.
The other thing I actually heard also, from a program is they have rubrics when they're selecting people, and that optional question is actually a point. And if
Yes.
you don't put it on there, it's gonna harm you. Somebody also said what is required is absolute, what is recommended is a must, and what is optional must do. That's a quote
So
that's something.
if they ask you for your GPA and you don't put it, one, they're probably going to assume that you're not putting it because you're trying to hide. Maybe you're not. Maybe you're just like, well, I don't know which one to put. Is it my cumulative, my semesters, my technical, whatever? Like, if you don't include stuff, that's kind of weird. Sometimes they will ask for demographic information. Sometimes they'll want to know your gender, your race, ethnicity, if you're a first generation college student, if you're a veteran, if you're a non-traditionally aged student. Sometimes students might say, well, I'm not putting any of that down. Like I'm not going to include any of that. That's a personal preference, but at the same time, if the program, like let's say for example, and you can see this on the application page. Let's say, for example, that they say we encourage applications from veterans. We encourage applications from, non-traditionally aged students. We encourage applications from, minority students, right? And if you don't put that down, it doesn't really make any sense, right? If you're a student from one of those populations, that's a missed opportunity. In addition, you might want to include something about your school. Now, there's a lot of colleges, right? There's tons and tons of colleges. So one, don't use acronyms, because USC, who knows what USC stands for? What does USC stand for?
University of South Carolina.
Or University of Southern California, right? So don't use the acronyms. CSU could be California State University, it could be Colorado State, right? So don't use acronyms when it comes to your school, like list the school out. In addition, maybe your school is a liberal arts school. Maybe your school is a tribal college. Maybe your school is an HBCU, right? Don't assume that they're going to know this. It would be helpful for you to give some context. Maybe, for example, you go to a pretty rural school, right? That would also, give some context, right? So the more information that you include about the school that you're attending, the better. I think that would be just kind of a more informative for the program directors as they select students. In addition, if it's funded by the National Science Foundation, they actually have to report the participation of students. And usually for the REU programs, more than half of the students have to be from schools other than the host institution. So it's really important that you include that. Another question you might get is, why do they want to know what other programs I'm applying to? That's a good one. That's also a tell. So for example, let's say that you are a pre-med, right? You're a pre-med student, or you say you're a pre-med student, but then when you look at the other programs that you're applying to, they're all completely different, right? They might want to know, what other programs that you're applying to. In addition, if it's a program at the same school, we used to do this when I ran one program at Cal. There was another program, and myself and my colleague, we would compare. We'd say, okay, this is a really good student, but I don't think that this student is a good fit for this program, but I would love to, have have them go to your program. If they ask you if they can share your application, totally up to you, but I would say yes. May we share your application, with others? I would say yes, because that means that they might say, I really like this student. This seems like a really good student, but they're probably not a good fit for this program. Let me give it to my colleague because I know they're looking for people. If you tell them, right, maybe the program is Caltech, and Caltech has a lot of different programs, right? So let's say, for example, that they say, okay, well, I'm applying to these other programs at Caltech. They're going to know that, like, oh, good, okay, this person's applying for this program at Caltech. Okay, they're a good fit for that program, right? So that's helpful. But don't lie, right? Don't lie and say, like, yeah, I'm applying to this program if you're not applying to that program. But also it kind of gives them a sense of what you're looking for in an applicant as well. So that's something. And then for grad school, and I know this is a ways off, but for grad school, it is also customary for them to ask you what other schools you're applying to in addition. So that's helpful for them to know. Oh, this is a good one. Can't I just email the professor? Okay, here's the deal. You can email the professor, but guess what? That doesn't mean you're going to get accepted in the program. In fact, you might email the professor and say, hey, I noticed that you're taking students this summer to do research. Can I work with you? That professor might say, sure, yes, I'd love to have you in my lab. They might not pay you. You're not applying through the program. You have to apply through the program because oftentimes these programs fund the research. The professors, generally speaking, for an REU program, the professors are not funding the research. It's the program that's funding the research. I had a student one time that was a very persistent student who emailed the professor and was like, yeah, I talked to the professor and they said that they'll take me and I'm good. And I don't, I live close by, so I don't have to, I don't need housing and this and that. Well, I said, that's great, but you still have to apply, through the program. Well, I don't have time to get letters of recommendation. I don't want to do that, blah, 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 whatever. I said, well, you have to apply, through the program. And the student actually ended up not even doing research with the professor. So it's really important that you go through the proper channels. The proper channels being, if they ask you who you want to work with, you apply through the program. Usually they have a ranking, like tell us which, projects you're interested in, why, or rank the professors in order. But sometimes they'll say not to reach out to the professor. Other times they might say reach out to the professor. But it's not a good idea to just simply, go straight to the professor and disregard the deadlines or, the procedures. I know it might seem easier to just do that. But again, you're not only applying to work with the professor in the lab, but you're also applying to be a part of the program. And with that said, whoever the program coordinator is or the program director is, make sure that you connect with them, because that's the person that's really going to help you. That's the person that's really going to help you, make sure you get paid, make sure you have your travel, all of these things. On that note, I didn't include this in the questions, but this is something to think about. When you get accepted, not if, but when you get accepted to the program, sometimes they pay students differently. If that's a concern, right? I know some programs will wait until the very end. Some programs will pay, part in the beginning, part in the middle, part in the end. It depends. If that's an issue, if you're like, it's a, financial concern, I would ask them, just so you know. I remember I was reading on Reddit, there was one student, it was pretty bad. Their meal card wasn't working, right, during the program. And they were too embarrassed and shy to ask. Don't do that. Like, don't do that. So sometimes they just don't know. So really just, just let them know. Just let them know that if there's no airport near where you live, sometimes students live in rural areas. If there's no airports close by, or let's say, for example, it would be easier, let's say your school is one place, but your home is another place, and you'd prefer to fly out of, a different place, just be really clear about that. I know this is like after the fact, but I just want to mention this because these are things that, students sometimes are too shy to ask about, and don't be, because,
Can I,
we want you to have a good experience.
can I just add this? Ms. Reardon is talking from like a point of experience. She's done these programs and run them. So what she's telling you is like an expert thing. Look at, I would say, if you are working in a job, look at the program coordinator as the HR manager. If you have a problem with your meal card, your professor is the last person you want to ask, because they probably don't have an idea what's going on. If you have struggles to get to an airport, any of that stuff, tell them, because they're there to support you. If they've accepted you, they want you there. But what they also tell you, don't email the professor, or don't do this and don't do that. These are not suggestions. These are not ways to stifle you. They don't want you to do it because they have reason, and there's all of these like different rules of, non-compete, and there's like a whole host of things that you have no idea what they are. And what you're doing is you're throwing a wrench in this thing, and the relationship with the program coordinator and the professor. And so you're going to be causing so much problem that they probably would not want you to be 6 feet close to or 100 feet close to their program or anything like that. And so, and the other part of it too, these communities are very, very, very small. Everybody knows everybody. And so if you have someone that is a bad apple, they will know. And so, and it's not, and that's just, it's a human behavior, and it's a human thing, and it's not fair, but that's how the world is. And you're going against something with other people and a competition and everything else. So like, follow these rules. These are not suggestions. These are like absolutely, when they tell you to do something, to do it. Um,
That's a good point, because that's an excellent point, because when you do these programs, you're representing your school, right? You're representing your school, you're representing, whatever school you're coming from. And what you want them to do is you want them to say, hey, you were a great candidate. Send us more like you, right? I once had a student from a school, I'm not gonna name the school. I was so like, oh my gosh, like, oh, I don't know if I want anyone from the school, because the student was extremely entitled. I mean, the student was extremely entitled and made these outrageous requests. And really just wasn't, just kind of was there for a free vacation, And so, you don't want to be that student, right? You want them to say, hey, we really liked having you in this program. Tell your classmates and have them come back and apply to the program. So you want to make a good impression. And
yeah,
that's true for not only REUs, but also internships and jobs and things like that.
yeah. And the other thing is, if you're like that problematic, they may reach out to your school, or also the person who wrote your letter of recommendation. So you're also going to ruin that bridge too. And I've heard of that happening. And the other part of it too, again, everybody knows everybody. So, you know, the person that have written you a letter of recommendation may be an alumni of that program or that school, or may know that person. So that's a really important thing. There was this is actually a really important question, and I think you're like the expert to answer this. What if your letter of recommendation uh was not received before the deadline?
Usually they are pretty lenient about that from the recommender. Now, if your stuff wasn't so generally speaking, what they usually do, sometimes they'll ask you to send the letter, but I think 9 times out of 10, you'll, approach someone and say, hey, can you be my recommender? They'll say, yeah, sure, of course. And then what happens is your recommender gets an email and says, so and so has, put you down as a reference, to apply to this program. And then they get the email, and then either they do a form or, they send a letter. Usually it's a form, with like a Likert scale, and then it's usually like, do you want to give any feedback, or do you want to upload a letter? I always upload letters because I know that's gonna, it'll say usually optional letter, and I always do letters, and I do pretty strong letters, if I can just say so. So if your letters aren't received by the deadline and you're a strong applicant, sometimes they will email you and say, hey, we got all your materials, but we haven't received your letters from your recommenders. Do you know the delay? And you can say, oh, let me email my professor and my recommender. But that goes back to reminding them, and people are busy, right? Sometimes they just need a reminder. So usually they sometimes will, accept late letters. Some programs, and I think this is really good, some programs have a deadline for your application, and then the recommender deadline is later. I know for grad school, sometimes letters of recommendation have been late. But that's not something that you can count on, because if they turn down the system, then they can't submit it. But if you're a strong applicant and they really want you in the program, then sometimes they might email the professor for you and say, oh, we're just following up. But that goes back to being nice to the program coordinator, because a program coordinator, director, PI, whatever, if they like you and they see that you're a good candidate, they're going to go out of their way. They're going to go out of their way to help you and support you. So that's why you want to, always make a really good impression.
Can I also, this is kind of like a psychological thing. If you're going to ask somebody that you really want a letter from them, and it's going to be a good letter, and you have a relationship, and that they're a really busy person, instead of nagging them, like let's say if the letter deadline is March 31st, like around March 26th or 27th, give them a thank you card for the letter. All right, go out of your way to do that, or bake them cookies or whatever, and just say really thank you. And you actually will know if that letter has been turned or not, but just do that, and it's like a really great psych op to shame this person to do it. And more likely they're not, like they forgot, but yeah. And so this is like a really good thing that I've learned to do, is to shame people without shame, without nagging them, like sending them an email. Hey, I'm just checking if you send this thing, or if you feel like, or if you're the kind of person that's embarrassed or shy, they can't do that, just do that. And I will guarantee you, don't go buy them an expensive gift or anything like that. That's not appropriate. And most people will actually turn it down, because some institutions have like quid pro quo laws, certainly state institutions. Um, but so don't go buy them anything. Make them, like, a card is really cheap. You can buy it at any place, and then make them cookies, or if you have a significant other that knows, don't make him a whole 6 feet, 6-course meal, but just something like that, very small. It's like a very small suggestion, And I would,
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, anything like just something, like just, a token like, hey, I really appreciate this. Thank you for doing this, because I think that they're helping you, right? They're going out of their way to help you. I mean, I think the expectation, I mean, faculty know that they have to write letters of recommendation, and anyone who's in higher ed, like, that's part of the job. But like, just you want to be memorable, and you want to show how much you appreciate that. And people are real. If you'd be very surprised, like gratitude, if you show someone gratitude, it really says a lot about your
character.
relationship, your character, and that bridge, you know what I mean? Because you never know, your professor, down the line, you might come back as a faculty, right? You might come as a faculty, and that person might be on your hiring committee, right? Or that, you never know, you're applying med school, whatever. So I always say, build those bridges, keep those bridges, don't burn bridges. Like, do not burn bridges. Like, it is bad. Even let's just say that maybe your professor completely forgets and doesn't write the letter of recommendation. Your advice is golden, right? Don't burn any bridges.
Yeah, don't go, don't nag them and stuff like that. Just do that. And like I said, this is like one of the best ways that you could shame someone without shaming them. But it's not so much shaming them, it's a reminder more than anything. But people will feel bad that they didn't do this, and they will do it. This is actually a question on letter of recommendation, and I don't know how to answer this personally. And so you being the expert, one of the advisors on my honor society, and I'm great, and is a great mentor, they wrote me a letter of recommendation, but it has few grammatical errors and lacks some depth that I hope it might have about my history and character. Would this still be a good letter of recommendation to submit?
So one of the, okay, is grammatical error. So well, if the letter has grammatical errors, I'm wondering if it I'm wondering, is like, who is it? Is it a faculty? Is it a, staff? Maybe a little more information about that. And then like it lacks depth. It depends on what you're applying to, right? Like, it depends on what you're applying to. I'm assuming if they gave you the letter, like if they gave the letter to you, sometimes I'll write letters of recommendation for people, and sometimes I'll say, hey, let me know if you have any feedback, right? And then they'll send it back, and they might say, oh, can you add, this and that. So I'm assuming that it sounds like you're in an honor society. So like, if the person wrote you a letter and they gave it to you, I don't think it would be bad for you to email them, or maybe go to their office hour and say, hey, thank you so much for this letter. I really appreciate it. I noticed that there's a couple of typos. Would you be willing to fix this? And would you be willing to include, something about, whatever, like, for example, I had a student that I wrote.
Oh, this is the type of something. It's a faculty staff member. She's a professor, but English is not her first language.
Oh, yeah. Well, if English isn't their first language, then, then that wouldn't be, then,
Yeah.
I mean, that's, that's not really an issue. But if you're saying it lacks depth, like if there's something that, if that's your only letter, then maybe you would want to ask them to revise it. But if it's not your only letter, if it's one of two or one of three, then I think you should be fine.
This is another one on top of this. Now, for your essay question, would you recommend we go to proofread them before we submit our
Yes,
responses?
yes, 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 yes.
I would say 1,000 times.
Go to
Um,
your learning center. You have a learning center.
a
It's
writing center.
writing center. Go to your writing center. If you have a friend who's really good at writing, your MESA director, your counselor, you know, when I worked even now, I proofread essays all the time. I think that I remember, in addition, you know, especially if you're a transfer student, if you're a transfer student and you have somebody who that you trust that's really good at proofreading essays, same thing. Give them some chocolate, give them a gift, whatever, give them a thank you card. Because if you're transferring, at some point you might, you know, have to write a transfer essay, and they, you know, might be willing to look at it. But generally speaking, people that like to write, like they enjoy, right? They probably, they're not gonna say, oh, I have to proofread this. They'll probably say, oh yeah, let me look at it and take a look at it. And also be willing to accept constructive criticism, because if it's not clear to them, then it's probably not going to be clear to who's ever reading it. So I think that's one thing that, like, as we write essays, you have to remember that you're basically, this is storytelling, right? So really, like, storytelling in terms of like why you're applying to this program, like why, right? So this is like essay slash elevator pitch slash storytelling slash pitch, right? You're kind of pitching yourself. So the letters, or not the letters, the essays should exude aptitude, interest, and enthusiasm, right? And if it's not, if the person reading it is like, oh, this isn't really clear, you know, accept
Their
that.
thinking is this person didn't care enough to proofread it and go ask somebody to do
Yes.
this, and it will negatively impact you. Um, we had the vice chancellor for enrollment and the executive dean for UCLA basically said, your essays are the only way we get to know about you. And if there's errors, that means that you did not care enough to put that time into it. This is for your transfer. This is for your scholarship. This is for summer programs. This is if you even want to be a dog catcher, like you have to put that time into it. That means reading it, rereading it, going to your writing center, going to your English teacher if you have a relationship with them. Like those are that's called resilience and hustle. Like you have to do that.
You
It
do.
will negatively, it would negatively affect you. And because they're looking for a reason to trim down, you know, from
Yeah.
1,000 application, 5,000 application. And I've also heard people that have read, like for medical school, they will literally stop reading your application and reject you right on the spot. So this is not like scare people. This is not the, you know, there is a lot of tools. There's also Grammarly. There's a host of other things that, like, you know, that you can use to make sure. This also includes email. This is if you're
Mhm.
sending somebody a professional email and it's not like it doesn't sound clear, or it has like shorthand like BC and WH and, you know, all of these different things, like this is being a professional. You want to be a professional.
Yeah,
And
you don't want to do text speak. You know,
yeah,
I mean, I know, like, I even like, I text a lot. Like, I text a lot, and I try not to do text speak just because I don't want to get in the habit of like you, or you know what I mean, instead of you. So like, Grammarly is great if you have Grammarly on your email, but don't just rely on Grammarly, right? But I think that reread everything before you you know, proofread. And you can also ask people. I mean, I have students all the time that say, hey, can you look at this email? How does this sound? Does this sound okay? You can do that as well. There's nothing wrong with that. That's over preparing, and over preparing is a beautiful thing. Don't, you know, don't worry about over preparing. No one's going to dock you points for, you know, for putting the finishing touches on it, because it's a reflection of you, right?
And then I have this other question, and putting on your program coordinator hat. Is it okay to ask the program coordinator if they've received your letter of recommendation?
Yes, that's actually really smart. What I would do is I would email them and say, you know, dear, you know, whatever the name, I just, you know, recently applied to the program. I just want to verify that you've received it. I'm really, you know, I'm a student from whatever your school is, and I'm really, you know, excited about having the opportunity to, you know, apply for the program, blah, blah, blah. Just want to verify it's been received. They might say, oh, actually, yeah, especially if it's a rolling admissions, right? So some schools that have rolling admissions means that they have a deadline, but they accept as they come in. So they might say, actually, yeah, you know, our deadline hasn't passed yet, but I noticed that you indicated you want to work with this professor, and I was going to ask you, you know, that person's not here this, you know, summer. Are you interested in working with this person, right? That's not a bad thing. I had, when I've run REU programs, especially if it's a school where I've gotten, like, I remember there was one school that I really, really appreciated. It was from the Claremont schools. I got some really good students from the Claremont schools, the Harvey Mudd, Claremont, I forget the other one. There's like 5 schools. I was like, I love these students because these students were always really, really prepared. And so, so I distinctly remember, like, oh, hey, do you know this student from last year? And they said, oh yeah, you know, this is a student that told me about the program, right? So like, that's not a bad thing, you know, but just keep it short and sweet. Don't like send them like, you know, like one email after another, after another, after another, you know, don't do that either.
The only caveat I would also ask, if they're using a computer system that shows you the queue, this is not for programs, this is for medical school. You could see if it's been received and not,
Oh yeah,
and bugging them is not, if you could check it. But I know the summer programs don't have those elaborate systems because
right.
those things are like really expensive. But also, if it's an online system, you get an email too if the letter has gone in. So if you get that as well, like, I would just say, like, you know, I would just say that, you know, you have a way to check it. But it's always good to reach out to them. And also, this is another caveat: don't do it like an hour before it's due.
Oh yeah.
Uh, don't do it an hour before that it's due, panicking about this. You know, you should do like a week before. That's why, you know, early bird gets the worm, is that you have all of this time that you could send that an email a week before to make sure everything is done and everything else. And so, yeah, that's the only other thing that I would add.
Yeah, no, that's good advice. And like I said, like, if it's due March 5th, pretend it's due March 1st. Just, you know, make it easy on
You're
yourself.
not as neurotic as I am. I would do it like 10 days before, but
Yeah, 10, that's good too. That's
I'm
not,
neurotic.
no, that's good. That's, neurotic is good, especially in these kinds of situations. Oh, here's one. I don't know if we have any math majors. Do we have any math majors on here? Maybe not. I don't think we did. I don't think we had it. Well, just in case we do, and I'm sure you have friends that are math majors. I always, always, always get students that are like, do you have anything for math majors? There are math majors. In fact, Georgetown has 2 programs for math majors. Cal State San Bernardino has a math program, Texas A&M. But if you're a math major, you should also look at computational bio, data science, bioinformatics, big data, and stats. I don't know if we have any math majors on here tonight, but I'm sure you have friends that are math majors. So if you have the math majors, don't want the math majors to feel like they're being neglected. And there are programs for math majors.
I would also look at Department of Defense. They use a lot of math people.
Yeah, that's true. That is absolutely true.
But I'm not cool, so I don't have any math friends.
There's I think there was a student that said, are there REUs in New York? Yes, there are. Columbia University has programs, Cornell, NYU. I mean, there's a lot of colleges in New York, and REU Finder, we have a lot of we have a lot of them listed. We're also fun fact is many programs have just gotten their notifications that they're being funded. So I'm getting a lot of programs that are, emailing me saying, hey, we got our funding. Can you list us? So, so I would, look frequently at programs, and I have them listed by, freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, where you can look and see what's available. But there was a student, I guess, who's interested in New York. And so, yeah, there are definitely programs in New York.
Another question is what are questions to ask if there's a question section in an application or interview?
What are questions? Oh, okay. So I think the question is if there are question section. You mean like if you have any questions like in the application, maybe?
No, yeah.
I mean, I would say what are questions asked if there's a question section?
Can you clarify that in the Q&A section for us? The person that asked that question, Ada. I would just say that if you're going to apply to a program, do your research, read about it, read it multiple times, read their website, know their mission statement, read their mission statement, know what kind of program it is. And if you have questions like, hey, do we get to select our, if it's not on the website, if it's on the website, I wouldn't, ask it, but just say that, like this is also a good one, is how have previous people the experience has been with this program and what are they doing now?
Yeah,
Something
that's
like
a good
that.
question. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I wouldn't ask. This is kind of a tell. Don't say like, do we have any free time? Don't ask
Yeah.
that. Right. That looks bad. Like what time do we start in the morning? Like that doesn't look good. But also don't ask the question that's on the website, right? If it specifically says the website, says that you have to have a minimum GPA of 2.9, right? If it says that, don't ask what's the minimum GPA, right? So look at that, because if you ask questions that are on the website, again, that's going to look like you're not paying attention to details. And you don't want that, because like I said, like somebody who's running a research program is not going to want somebody who's not paying attention to details, because that's kind of a liability, right? I mean, there's you might be working with some really dangerous equipment, or you're someone who, even though you're not careless, it might come across as being careless. So just make sure you do your research beforehand.
Yeah, the other thing is like talking about, do I have free time? There's ways to ask questions. Just you could ask, hey, during the program, do we have any opportunities for enrichment or self-discovery or something like that? Like,
Yeah, that's a good question. Like, for example, that's a really good example. Like, let's say, for example, it's in a different part of the country, right? You might say, hey, is there any opportunity to tour any of the nearby campuses? Or, hey, I noticed that, there's, some lab that's nearby, or there's a company that's nearby. Would we be able to get a tour or something like that? That actually would be a good thing, because that would show that you've done your homework and you've taken the time to see, that that there are things nearby, and you've, taken that extra step to do some research. But they're going to be impressed. Oh, you've looked at that. You've noticed that. So they're gonna appreciate that. Like, I'll give you a good example, right? Like, let's say I'll use Berkeley as an example. Maybe you're applying for an REU program at UC Berkeley, and you might say, is there an opportunity to visit the Berkeley lab, right? Or any school probably has a national lab nearby, right? Or museums or things like that, right? Those might be things that are of interest. Usually programs will have some type of excursion for community building and social activities. So that's actually helpful as well, because like the program that one of the programs that I run, like, we bring students to the Exploratorium in San Francisco. And the reason why we bring students to the Exploratorium in San Francisco is because students specifically said, hey, I was reading about the Exploratorium, and even though we're in Berkeley, I'd really love to visit San Francisco, right? So that was a suggestion that a student had. So you never know. So those suggestions that you put forth, sometimes those shape the program. So that's a good thing.
This is another program. If we get accepted to 2 different research opportunities, would we still be accepted again if we apply again to the other research opportunity that we didn't pick?
Yes. They know that you're applying to multiple programs. What I would do is I would let them know ahead of time that you're interested, and if they would if you applied last year, like, let's say, for example, you got into 2 programs, right? And you can only pick one. So you would decline the one that you didn't choose. If you applied next year, I would say, I was accepted last year, but I opted for this program because blah, 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 right? On that note, something really important, that it wasn't a question, but I want to put this out there. Sometimes students want to do the same program twice. That doesn't make any sense. Don't do that. It's usually the exact same program, and you're not going to get anything out of it. Sometimes students are like, well, I love this program. I love the school. I love the lab. It was a good experience. Don't do the same program. The school might have multiple programs, and you can maybe apply to a different program, but don't do the exact same program. You want to broaden your network. You want to broaden your skill set, and it just makes zero sense. And the likelihood is they probably are not going to accept you to another program, because remember, they have to write reports, right? And it would be kind of weird if you did the same program 2 years in a row.
And I would also just add, don't ghost them.
Yeah.
Like, if you get accepted, don't like ignore them or whatever, and they say like that would like really tick them off.
Yeah, that's the same for internships. Don't ghost anybody. Don't, just decline the offer in a nice way, and just let them know, that you are going to go with another program, but you're very interested still, and maybe, for example, maybe you do a program, and maybe you present your research at a conference, and you see that program there, right? You can say, hey, I applied to this program last year, and you weren't accepted to the program, but you were interested. That's also something too. Like, if you were not accepted into a program, I've seen this as well. Like, maybe you see them at a conference and you say, oh, I heard about this program. I applied last year, I didn't get in. And they might say, because I've had this happen to me, I say, oh, well, what year are you? And they say, oh, I'm a sophomore. Oh, okay. Well, you're, we were really accepting juniors, but Now that you're a junior, why don't you apply again? Or, do you have your resume or things like that? Again, building those connections are always important.
This is the last question that's listed unless somebody else asks one. Is there a good way to practice interviews? Because I do get nervous.
Everybody gets nervous, even though some people hide it more easily than others. Practice absolutely makes perfect. Yes, I would go to your career center. I would ask if you maybe have a friend that's done internships, if you have a friend that's done research programs. You can't ask them for letters of recommendation, but you can ask them to do mock interviews. I would also look at advice online. There's a lot of really good, and not Reddit, but sometimes Reddit is actually good for things, but things such as interview questions, look at the top, interview questions. When someone says, tell me about yourself, they're basically asking for your elevator pitch, right? So when you have an opportunity to do a mock interview with someone, I think those are really valuable. Maybe there's a mentor, right? If you have a mentor, someone that that you feel can give you good constructive feedback. You don't want someone who's just going to say, oh yeah, you're great, you did great, even though you probably did do great, but somebody who's going to give you some constructive feedback in terms of, how you communicate. And again, interest, aptitude, and enthusiasm. Interest, aptitude, enthusiasm, and really, taking the time to put forward a very thorough application, you're going to stand out.
Yeah, so we answered that. Is it okay to ask the program coordinator if they received the recommendation letter?
Yeah, absolutely. I would just, yeah, you definitely can. You definitely, but you just you want to take the opportunity to, as you ask them, introduce yourself. Hi, my name is, so-and-so. I'm from, this school. I applied to your program. I'm really, interested. I just wanted to verify that you did indeed receive the recommendation letter. And then they might, get back to you and either say, yes, they did, no, they didn't. And maybe, maybe they have some familiarity with that school, or maybe they don't, but yeah, you definitely can do that. And connect with me on LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn. I post a lot on LinkedIn. I don't post that much on Twitter. I probably should more. Instagram for sure. Facebook sometimes. But definitely those are channels that we use to post announcements. We also have, you can sign up to be on our list, and you can sign up to be on our list, and then we ask you what you're interested in. If you're interested in scholarships, if you're interested in internships, things that you're interested in, you can get announcements. We try not to just spam you. I try to be really intentional about what we send students, but definitely, LinkedIn is probably, a really good way. And then of course, Instagram, and apply to these programs. I'm telling you, there are opportunities for everyone, and it's okay to be nervous. It's okay to be scared. It's okay to, have uncertainties, but feel scared and do it anyways, and be confident, because you're all, I mean, the fact that, it's Friday night and you're here, on this call, trying to get information that's going to benefit you, that says a lot about you. That tells me that you have the interest, you have the enthusiasm, and you have the aptitude. And so your job now is just to convey that and find a program that will support you in whatever endeavors you have. So thank you for this opportunity. It's been really fun to connect.